Well, if you blink, you might have missed Roger Federer and Serena Williams at the Miami Open. Now it'll be a few months before we see Federer again. What about Serena? Novak Djokovic is out as well and out of sorts. Instead, the men's draw has become a showcase for the next-gen brigade. On the women's side, Victoria Azarenka is back with a vengeance, while the ageless Venus Williams and U.S. Open champ Sloane Stephens lead the American charge. Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand starts now. Greetings. It's Tuesday, March 27th, 2018, and thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Tennis. I'm Jeff Shane, joined by our PSN tennis expert, Andrea Leand, and she is out in South Florida, where she's been taking in the Miami Open out on Key Biscayne. Andrea, good morning, and how's it going today?
Oh, it's been just terrific. We had a little rain last night, but the Miami Open has been phenomenal. The moments have been terrific, really heartwarming when they brought the Stoneman Douglas kids out there and paid tribute to them with, of course, the new tournament director, James Blake, doing a phenomenal job, Jeff, in his first year on the job, really out there talking to the players, talking to everyone, getting feedback, being just terrific. Because, this is his new job. He was a top player himself. He knows what it's like to be in a tournament like this, a top-tier event. And he's just been there every step of the way, and I give him such tremendous credit for the job he's doing. It has made all the difference this year. But it has been a great event. The Miami Open has just been every single day, big news, big matches, great tennis, and lots of emotion.
And this is kind of a transitional year. You're talking about James Blake in terms of final year on Key Biscayne. They've had the groundbreaking for the new complex up at Hard Rock Stadium, the Dolphins' home. And I imagine Blake's job is kind of helping that transition go along, right?
Well, first of all, everyone loves James. He is so well respected. He's so well liked. And, of course, everyone respects what he has to say. So when you have the moments of tension, as we did with Carolyn Wozniacki, he was right out there in the forefront to really help everyone through these moments. But he's also there just doing the right thing, saluting the right players, and I think, as you said, paving the way to this transition to the Miami Dolphins Stadium next year. And I think it's going to be a great move. The more we go through this year, we can realize that it's time for a change. It's time to really upgrade this entire event. It deserves it. It's a top-tier event. And I think the fans also will love it. They'll love the experience. But we're having a great send-off. We've just had incredible storylines with the next-gen stars, with the veterans, with Venus Williams, of course, Jeff, my hero. Venus Williams, still in this draw, has had some of the toughest three setters, including being Conta yesterday, but is still alive. And we also have Del Potro still in there. Can you imagine? He may win the Sunshine Double, as Roger did last year. He is in contention. He won Indian Wells. He's still in the draw here, unlike some of the other veterans. But, again, lots of big storylines.
Absolutely, and let's delve, into the draws and into the storylines that have been going on out at Key Biscayne. I guess we'll deal with the one that is not there. Maybe surprisingly, only stayed one match and wound up losing a three-setter. But Roger Federer is out. He's going to leave the number one ranking behind, and we're not going to see him for, I guess, what is this, the second consecutive year that he has said, I'm not playing clay court this season.
Right, lots of big announcements from Roger Federer. He was not happy about this loss. He lost to Kokkinakis, a very talented Australian who has been hobbled by injuries in the last few years. Some believe Kokkinakis was actually more talented than Kyrgios, the other Australian. And, of course, with all these injuries, he's been making comebacks of sorts. He's a very strong guy, hits a very powerful ball. Actually was a practice partner for Roger during the off-season. So Roger knew him well, likes him. Everyone likes him. He's a very funny guy. But this was all about Roger, really, Jeff. And Roger just, again, was not on form. I never really felt he played his best game at Indian Wells, even though he did reach the final there, losing to Del Potro. But here, again, the backhand off. He did have Ivan Lubicic there. his coach. His coach did come in for this event, but it didn't seem to make a lot of difference. Roger just not really feeling at ease, he said, with the movement, with his timing, with his game. And again, it goes to preparation. So much about Roger is preparation at this stage in his career, 36 years of age. Came in as number one. I get the feeling that the preparation may not have been there. Of course, Ljubicic on a ski vacation before this really was not working as much with Roger after he took the number one ranking in Rotterdam. And so my guess is the preparation was really the issue, and he came into this really not as sharp as he usually does. And he does. He gives up that number one ranking because he failed to defend the points of winning this title last year to Rafa. So Rafa, who's been out and who's expected back in Davis Cup in a couple weeks, becomes the number one player in the world. But of course, Roger could get it back because Rafa has lots of points to defend in that clay court season. And as you just mentioned, Roger has said he will not play the clay. He is not going to play the French Open. I think this is a smart move for Roger. We have seen that the toll that this has taken on him physically. He had trouble last year after Wimbledon with the back. And I don't think he has that physicality of some of these young guys who can take the wear and tear week in, week out. And the clay is just too much at this stage. So I think he's making a very smart move, very prudent in skipping the clay again, although it's not popular, and he will aim for the grass and come back in the grass. But I hope then we'll see the preparation that is so essential to Roger's game because, Jeff, he was not happy. He got into that press after that match. He was not happy he lost. He had his family here. They were staying at the beach. They were having a wonderful time, and I can tell you he wasn't thrilled. So I think we'll see a much more spirited Roger, a positive Roger back on the grass. But as you mentioned, we also are missing Novak Djokovic. He did show up, and unlike Roger, just was completely, though, out of sorts and had no answers, doesn't seem to really have found any answers at all as to his comeback. And he mentioned the physicality, he mentioned the fitness, but it's really a mentality too, Jeff. He just cannot, he has the team. He's got Andre Agassi, he's got Radek Stepanik there. Andre did not come to this tournament. He also, interestingly enough, in Indian Wells, trained with Novak, but then left before the first match. So they felt that Novak should not have played this. They don't think he's ready. They don't think he's ready mentally or physically. And they feel that he really needs to start finding these internal cues to get the motivation, to get the right frame of mind to play. Because they feel if he doesn't have the right frame of mind, then he should not play. And I'm thinking, Jeff, that we could be looking at possibly Novak thinking of retiring. And the vibe I'm also getting is there's still issues personally and professionally that he's not sorted out, and things are just too complicated for him at this stage. And until he sorts things out and that he is happy in his personal, happy in the professional, there's really no point to him walking on court in the state he's in.
Well, and when you throw the physical ailments on top of that, I suppose that gives a lot of reason to maybe step away. And while you're solving the personal and professional issues, the physical also would have a chance to heal. But at a certain age, I suppose it's also a long comeback to get back to where you were and think you ought to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he has injuries at this point. He hasn't really specified any injury. This is more of a fact of conditioning and a fact of strength building and fitness and feeling he can move as he used to do. We're seeing him off balance on court and lots of unforced errors, just not mentally into it, but he feels he doesn't have confidence in his physicality as he once did. He is not being able to rely on the same cues he once had. And so there are no shortcuts at this point for Novak. He's going to have to do it the old-fashioned, hard-working way, and he doesn't seem to really want to do that. And you don't see him really putting in the work off court, and you don't see him putting in the work on court either in practice. And so if he's not going to do that and he's not going to be in shape, no wonder he's not going to have confidence going into these matches. So, it's unlike Andy Murray, who is actually now in Monte Carlo back training on the clay with his whole team. So a few months after the hip surgery, he is back training now. He is trying to make a go at this and doing it the right way. But it'll be interesting to see if Novak just says, you know what, I just have too much going on here in my life, and I haven't really resolved it. I haven't been able to simplify it and find the answers. And if he has too much going on off court, it does impact him on court. So we'll have to see what happens. But I'm not so sure that he may just feel like, you know what, this is it's been a great run. I've had a great career.
Wow. Well, turning to the players who are still in the draw, and we are to the round of 16 with the men. Had some weather issues, not completely there yet, but really, especially in Rogers' half of the draw, this has become a showcase for the next gen players. Nick Kyrgios, Borna Coric, Denis Shapovalov. Kyrgios is going to play Sasha Zverev in the round of 16. All of a sudden, this is a place where one of these guys can really shine the rest of this week.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's looking at that Zverev-Kyrgios match. Of course, they played so many times, and they're, childhood rivals. There's a rivalry there. They're also friends to some extent. But everyone's been talking about Kyrgios. He's been doing the children's clinics. He's been putting so much time into all the different charity efforts that go with this tournament. And he's been so patient and so sweet and nice, actually. So we're seeing this side of Nick that everyone just loves and is embraced. But we haven't seen a lot of him on court. He's won both his matches fairly easily, hasn't really been tested, beat Fognini in the last round, hasn't played really anyone of significance like a Zverev. And so now he's really going to be tested. We're going to see if he really is in condition, especially, in the hot humidity out there, if he really can go the distance. It is 2 out of 3, so it's not the Grand Slam 3 out of 5 he has to be concerned about. And I think in 2 out of 3 that's better for Nick. The court is playing slow, not as slow as Indian Wells. So it's going to be up to Nick to depend on the big weapons. But, we're seeing a much more relaxed Kyrgios, Jeff. I mean, we're seeing him, of course, I think this is because he's back with Isla, his girlfriend who he had split from and was, very much restless over in that period of time, but he's back with her. And that to me has created a balance for him in his life and a structure for him in his life. And he seems much more at ease and much calmer this year. So I think that he is in a good place. I think he's getting a lot of positive feedback from all his efforts with all the kids and so forth in the last 10 days, because I think that is to be praised, and it's very commendable in all that he has put out. But we also have to talk about Zverev, who is split with Ferraro, his coach. His father is coaching him. He is not rehiring anyone else. He's put his father in the role, and as his father, has said, he pretty much likes the way Sasha is playing, but others feel differently, including myself. I think that Sasha's serve is not really maximized. I think it could be stronger and bigger. I don't think he's moving as well. He is, yes, still working with Jez Green, but he doesn't have the agility on court. He can hit fast sprint from side to side, but it's the up and back. He's not being able to take advantage of his ground strokes at net, where he's just not comfortable with the volleys. His eye hand really does need to be worked on, because he's not picking up the ball as quickly at net and not really able to put those away. So it really leaves him on that baseline. And this is where I think Kyrgios can exploit that movement, can exploit a lot of the Zverev weaknesses with the big weapons. So we'll have to watch for that, because, of course, Kyrgios, this will be the first time he's been tested. We know he hasn't played a lot because of all the injuries, especially Indian Wells. He pulled out a Ver again with the arm. So this will be the first time for a test, but this is the next gen, because, of course, you mentioned George will face Shapovalov, and George beat Sock in a tough 3-setter. He, of course, almost beat Roger last week, Indian Wells, rather, in the semi, so he is playing well. He will go to a career high no matter what after this tournament. But Shapovalov also with phenomenal wins, beating Sam Querrey yesterday. And again, he's not big, Greg. Shapovalov is not a big guy, but boy, he looks older to me. He looks more substantial physically now. I think he's built himself up. He's stronger physically. He can take these big hitters on. But you're going to have two probably of the smallest guys with George and Shapovalov playing each other. So, yeah, as you mentioned, lots of next gen, but, of course, everyone, of course, also is focusing on Del Potro, because Del Potro has the experience, he has the crowd support that he feeds off of, and to me, I think he is a favorite to get through that if he's not too tired.
Yeah, and we were going to kind of get to that bottom half of the draw where Del Potro certainly kind of in his element. He's got confidence, he's in He's in South Florida. There's that natural, Latin American connection, and those rooting for him as kind of opposed to what he saw at Indian Wells. And I guess the other person, we don't talk about Cilic, but he is the number 2 seed in this event.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a grudge match. Cilic will now play Isner. Isner has beaten him, actually, the last couple of times. And, Cilic had commanded that head-to-head for so long. And then Isner's come back and really taken command of it now. So that will be a grudge match between the two big guys. And Isner, of course, will have to serve well. As I mentioned, the court is playing slow. It'll be interesting because Isner now has had to win a couple of matches very proficiently. He did have trouble against Vesely, a tough 3-setter, but he beat Uzny very easily. And Cilic, as you said, has quietly gone through the draw, very methodical, such a smart guy. But he's going to have to use his big weapons, too, to keep John back, and especially the return to serve from Cilic. That's going to be the key. He needs that one game where he can break through with the return. I think he's a smart guy. I think it'll be an interesting match. Chung, who actually partnered with Shapovalov in the doubles. It was so much fun to watch, Jeff, these two guys. Chung, of course, has come on strong. He said he's gotten control of the blisters on his feet that hurt him in the Australian Open, why he had to pull out against Roger. But he does seem more physically fit to me. He seems, more used to the wear and tear now. He's getting used to the whole genre out there. And I think the experience is starting to also show in his results. He's had very, very comprehensive wins. And as you said, we'll play Sousa, who I expect him to beat. So it'll be interesting because you do see now some of these smaller guys like Chung, Shapovalov, George doing well against the big servers like Del Potro and like Cilic and Isner and so forth. So it's a lot of contrast in styles now in the men's draw, which I think makes it very exciting. And we do want to mention Ranic because, of course, he's had a really tough go in the last couple of years with injuries, but he is still in the draw, and he, in the last couple of events, really has started to put himself back in contention. So I do expect that he should get through Chardy, and then that would line him up with Del Potro, and what a match that would be.
Care to take a guess at who we're going to see in the final come the weekend?
Well, if I had to go with the intangibles, I would say Del Potro in that half because again, it depends how much he has left in the tank. But I do think he's in better shape. He said for the first time in his career, he does not have any issue with injury. He feels so good. And we knock on wood when we say this because, of course, he's had so many, the 4 wrist surgeries and so forth. And he is older, and his game does take a lot out of him. And he does have the weaknesses, the weak backhand, the weak mobility. But you know what? It's interesting. The intangibles always outweigh that. And when you have these crowds, I mean, we talked about the crowds, obviously, with the Wozniacki-Puig match and them supporting Monica Puig. They get behind Del Potro. There's a very South American contingent here. Miami loves him, and he loves them. And this is a guy that feeds off the crowd and can raise his level of his game at the most crucial times. And so that's why I think he's a sentimental favorite, and he's one of my favorites.
and from the top half, who do you think he faces in the final?
I think it's a tough one, to be honest with you. I don't see any clear. Verdasco obviously beat Kakanakis, who has beaten Feather, so he goes into that part of the draw. He's a tough lefty. He plays Carreño Busta, who beat actually Stevie Johnson yesterday. I really think it's a toss-up, to be honest with you. I think it's a very even draw. You have Kevin Anderson, who's the most consistent of all of them, has won some titles now, smaller events. Burditch and Tiafoe still have not finished, Jeff. We had rain last night, as I mentioned, and they are still in the third set, 5-4 Tiafoe up, so they will go back out there today around 3, and then they're going to have to the winner will have to turn around and play the next match at 6 o'clock against Anderson. So I would favor Anderson to get through there and get through that part of the draw, but he's a consistent guy, and he has put in the work, and he has, he goes out there, and he's a true professional. So he will take advantage of anyone who is not on game. But I would think that Zverev, Kyrgios, those two guys are going to be the ones that are interesting to watch. If they play on form, I would think one of them may end up in the final.
Okay. over at the women's draw, we touched on it at the top of the show. Serena Williams, one match, tough draw. She got last week's winner, or the Indian Wells winner in Naomi Osaka. Osaka was the winner, and again, you're getting questions on Facebook, and the questions being raised whether players back from maternity should be seeded. Serena Williams got some work in at Indian Wells, but boy, one and done. Like I say, bad draw in terms of who your opponent was, but one and done in Miami.
Well, and this question has been asked all over Twitter and Facebook to me. I've had hundreds of inquiries about it, so it does make sense to go over. And that is, why isn't Serena seeded? She was number one in the world when she went out for maternity leave. Shouldn't the WTA be at the forefront of this issue and giving her not only a protected ranking to allow her into the draws, but a protected seeding so she's placed in the draws? But folks, guess what? Even had she been seeded in this draw, she may have still had to face Naomi Osaka in her opening match. Yes, she would have had a bye, but Naomi Osaka was not seeded because, of course, her ranking has not jumped up high enough since Indian Wells last week to give her that placement in the draw. So she still may have had to play Osaka. That wouldn't have solved the problem. And yes, Greg, I think that going down the line, as Kim Kleister says, the seeding's always nice when you already have that type of caliber of play, when you've worked your way back and you played yourself into shape and you're ready to be seeded. But it doesn't help if you're not at that point yet, and I don't think Serena is. We watched Osaka. The turnaround was actually tougher from Indian Wells, was actually tougher for Serena than Osaka, even though Osaka won Indian Wells and only had about 48 hours to get ready for the match. And that's because I think, it's very tough, as we mentioned, in Serena's plan to come back and to play back-to-back the top-tier events in Indian Wells and Miami. That's tough on the body. The body is not used to playing all these matches. She had 3 matches in Indian Wells. She had to really give the body time to, regenerate, re-energize, and there just wasn't that time. And I think when I actually saw her in the days leading up to the event, she looked good, Jeff. She was, focused. She was determined. She was very relaxed. She had a great charity outing at Acing for Autism at Cliff Drysdale's event. Simona Halep was there. There's a great photo of the two of them, the number one player in the world with the former number one player in the world, laughing and joking and really enjoying themselves. And Halep, of course, soliciting for her to be seeded number one and ranked number one and get that back from maternity leave. But no, I think that by the time she got to the match against Osaka, when I was courtside, I watched her come out of the tunnel onto the court as she was announced. And I have to tell you, by the coin toss, she looked wiped out emotionally to me. And I think there's a lot going on. Of course, she was involved in the groundbreaking ceremony at the Miami Dolphins Stadium. There were lots of appearances. And I think emotionally, just having to play back-to-back events is a lot to ask from someone who's been out of competition for 14 months. And so I think that, to me, she looked wiped out emotionally before the match started. And, in fact, that is how it unraveled. It really was not much of a match. And to me now, it's about, they talk about the conditioning and fitness, and that is what it's all about with Serena at this stage. She strikes the ball beautifully. She knows how to play. She's a veteran. She has all the intangibles. That's not the issue. It's taking the weight off, and she's working on it. It's a process. And yes, she has lots of other things in her life and lots of other excuses as to not to find the time to do the work. But I also think it's a discipline in the diet as well. And I think that it's not just the fact that it's thrown her off in the mobility, it's thrown her balance off in striking the ball. And we saw a lot of sliced backhands and a lot of off balance shots that she was hitting. And that's just because I think that the fact that she's not in condition is really throwing off that balance and pushing her arms through the ball. So I definitely think that, look, she's still nursing. She's still being mommy. She still has a lot to work out, but she's doing the right things. It's been very, very positive. Everyone's thrilled to see her back. And now the question is just, what is the game plan moving forward? Will she play Charleston, which is a smaller event? It'll give her more matches. Should she skip the clay? Because, clearly when you're trying to work on your fitness, you don't want to be on the red dirt where you're forced to do a lot of moving. But for Serena, as I'm told over and over again, it's about setting goals and having goals in sight that motivates her to train. So she likes to have the tournaments. She likes the stage. She likes to be in that ambiance and that atmosphere. It does energize her. She is an extrovert in that way. She feeds off it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how they map that out, whether she plays the Italian because that's where she got engaged to her husband Alexis as a sentimental place for her to go, and skips the French and really shoots for the grass. It'll be interesting to see. I think that's probably the right move. Play Charleston, play Rome, skip the French, and go to the grass and aim for Wimbledon.
Is tough a decision, or maybe easy a decision for her to skip the French as it is for Roger to skip the French?
I think that it's a little tougher for her, actually. Roger was very definite about it. He has no interest in playing on the red clay. He physically just doesn't feel it's worthwhile to take the risk of injury. For Serena, I think that actually the question is also significant, is the risk of injury at this stage. And, look, I said, how about getting into some, water aerobics, or, getting into those treadmills they put underwater, these Olympic sites, and working underwater where it doesn't put the same pressure on the body, so you can get the cardio, you can get that type of fitness and get into shape. There are lots of different things. They're going to have to think outside the box, I think, is the key with Serena. Will Patrick stay on the team? Mouratoglou, the coach, is that dynamic change so much that it's really not helpful anymore? Does she need a different coach to come in, a different energy, someone to give her a different look on the approach and keep it interesting for her? I think that's another thing they're going to have to look at. But for me, I think that Serena has to think about, until she has to be realistic. And you don't want to just go out there to play matches at the French Open because there are no buys there. And it is a tough row, as she knows, because she's won it. But she's going to do what she wants to do, and she's going to do what feels good. And to me, I think it will be tough for her to skip the French because she loves Paris. She has an apartment there. But on the other hand, there's so many grass court events that start during the French that she could start warming up on and getting comfortable on the grass, because when you really look at legitimate chances for her to do well, Wimbledon is the one. Absolutely.
And then also in that women's draw, two other players not there anymore. Top seed Simona Halep, number 2 Caroline Wozniacki. But another wild card, Vika Azarenka, she's back, and she's back with a vengeance, isn't she?
Well, I'm so happy to see Vika. I absolutely adore Vika. The tour needs Vika. She is a street fighter. She wants it so badly. She's so happy to be back. Again, she is able to play Miami because she was able to work it out in the ongoing custody negotiations over her son Leo, and I saw all of them there. Her parents were there with Leo, getting ready to go have dinner one night, coming out of the hotel, and you can just see how much she wants it, and you can see it on court. One thing that separates Vika from the rest is just that fierce, raw ambition and that raw desire to want it so much. And, of course, the ferocity in her ground strokes. But what was interesting is we went to take a selfie. I went to take a selfie with Vika. And as I'm standing there with her, I didn't realize how tall she is and how long her arms are. And so I said, I saw how long her arms are. I said, you take the camera and you take the selfie because your arms are much longer than mine. In fact, I think my fingers only reach just past her elbow. That's how long her arms are. But it's these long extremities. It's the long arms now that I realize create that kind of whip-like motion in her ground strokes and allow her to generate the racket head speed that creates this incredible pace in her groundies. She easily beat Radwanska with that type of pace, and it's going through the draw. Of course, she's coming out of that Halep part because Halep lost to Radwanska. But Vika, again, it goes back, Jeff, to who wants it more. And that's what I think will be the telling tale in this women's draw. Who wants it more? And right now, there's no one who wants it more than Vika. And I think that for her also, yes, she still has those ground strokes. She's still very aggressive. She has that innate ability to take the ball on the rise. But the question is she has, look, everyone's on Facebook is asking about her weight. Is she too thin? Has she taken too much weight off? No, I don't think so at all. I think she looks good, but I do think she has lost, as the players are telling me, some pace on the shot. So it'll be interesting to see in her only second tournament back in almost a year if she is able to go the distance and maintain that pace and maintain the physicality through all these matches, because her body is not used to it. The serve is the weakest part. It's a technical issue. She's going to have to work on that. No, I think that it's just so great to have her back on the women's tour because they need someone who wants it so much.
Yeah, it's always great to watch a fighter on the court. On the American side, with 2 of the 8 quarterfinalists are from the U.S. The ageless, as we've mentioned, Venus Williams, still playing well, and then Sloane Stephens, the U.S. Open champion, having a good showing in South Florida.
Well, Sloane is a little bit of an enigma to people. You know, they're still trying to figure out. They were trying to figure out why she didn't win a lot of matches after she won the U.S. Open. Now they're trying to find out, why is she doing so well here? Because, of course, she just beat Muguruza. Big upset for her. Sloane coming in at 12 in the world here, seeded 12. And the reason is because Sloane has now put in the work. And she said herself that after the Australian Open that she had to really sit herself down and get herself together and realize, you know, if I want it, I got to go take it. She just turned 25 years of age, and it was just her birthday a couple weeks ago. And so this is about really seizing this opportunity in her life, in her career. And I think that the fact that she has just signed 4 new deals, she's very marketable off court. She's a terrific personality. Kids love her. She's like a magnet to them. They just love the smile. They love her personality. And she's a terrific person. But now we're seeing it on court, Jeff. We're seeing the mental frame, the toughness, the ability to try and sort out things when the game isn't working. And against Muguruza, it was the smartest match that Sloane has played in her professional career. And I've seen her since she's been the age of 15. So I have a good basis of comparison. And it was the smartest match she has played because this time she was able to exploit Muguruza's weaknesses. She had lost to Garbiñe 2-0 the last time, had gotten trounced. But this time she was able to exploit Garbiñe's mobility, serve, and also really able to mix up the pace. Did not allow Garbiñe to get grooved, to get into a slugfest, because, of course, Muguruza loves the slugfest. She loves being grooved to one side so she doesn't have to move. But Sloane mixed it up. She threw in the slices. She threw in the high shots. She moved her. She had even some short angles and drop shots. And she kept Muguruza off balance. And to me, it was a great match from Sloane. Is it the best tennis I've ever seen her play? No. But it was good enough, and it was the smartest. And that's what I love to see about Sloane, is that she's using her head, she's showing the focus, and she's showing that she really wants it. So, yeah, I think that she has she'll play Kerber next, so she has a psychological edge with. She'll play today. She's beaten Kerber the last couple of times. I've seen both matches. But this time, Sloane's going to have to change the roles, and it's going to have to be more of the aggressor. She's going to have to use more of her power, which she has, and she's going to have to serve well. So it'll be interesting to see how Sloane really responds to having to play consecutive tough matches in a row, to having to play Muguruza yesterday and come right back today and play Kerber. Can she, switch the dials that quickly? I hope so, and because everyone loves her, and of course she did grow up in this area, so she, has a lot of friends and family here, and I think that also helps her because she also feeds off the crowd. She is an extrovert. Because, of course, as you mentioned, Lu-Ming is the perennial favorite and my hero as well, Venus Williams.
and Venus she keeps on ticking. Whatever issues that she may have had a couple years ago, she's making semifinals of major championships. She seems like every time she enters now, she's right there.
Well, she's just at such a good place. And as you mentioned, it's always Venus that has the best matches. I mean, we talked about this last year. It's why I felt she was player of the year. Yes, she wasn't number one, but she, was always deep into every draw. She always provided the biggest moments in every tournament. And to me, she personifies every single thing you want your child to show when they compete in a sport. And that is just incredible guts, incredible drive, but also great balance, great thinking, and great perspective out there. You never see her get angry. You never see her get upset or flustered. Very calm, very stoic, and always positive. And that is what the key, I think, to Venus. Almost 38 years of age, Jeff. You know, she's going to be 38 in June. And the interesting thing to me is she's still improving. Can you imagine at 38 years of age still trying to improve your game? She has added some topspin to the forehand, which has reduced the unforced errors. She's showing much better command at net because the volleys are crisper. She's really sticking those volleys well. And that is a key to her game because she's not going to be able to outrun these girls from the baseline. And she got herself into trouble against Kiki Bertens because she was 10 feet behind the baseline and allowing Kiki to dictate. She's going to have to step up to the baseline and dictate herself, command those points, and try and move the opponent so she can get in and shorten those rallies and put the volley away. If she could improve her first serve percentage, she'll make her life a lot easier. But it's going to be interesting. She'll play, of course, our collegiate star, Danielle Collins, who's been a surprise, a tremendous surprise in this draw, as well as Indian Wells, in the next round. And they do have a day off now because, of course, Venus had to play back-to-back against Bertens and then Konta, who she beat yesterday. And so I think that will be helpful to Venus. I think the extra day always helps. And she just loves it here. You know, as she says, she's just, again, she's feeding off it. She's not an extrovert. She's an introvert. But she is enjoying the support, enjoying the success at this stage in her career. And she looks physically stronger to me, Jeff. And I think that is the key, is why she's able to endure it. We've been asked on Facebook, how can she still be in the draw with the heat, the humidity at her age? It's because she has improved her fitness. She is noticeably stronger physically in this tournament, and she's been working on that. So, I give her credit because whenever a player is able at this point, after being on the tour for 20 years, to improve their game that much more, you have to give them a salute because she has been a role model now to everyone, not only to kids, but to the other players on the circuit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 38 years old and getting better.
Almost.
Don't see that very much. Almost 38 years old. We touched on Danielle Collins. Her name jumped out at me. 2-time, I believe, NCAA champion. Kind of came up a different route. But is this a player, Floridian, number one recruit going to college? Is this somebody that maybe we need to keep an eye on?
Well, I love this story because it's a different path to the pros. You know, we've so sometimes forgotten about our collegiate stars and how important going to college is. Look, I remember going to Princeton University, and I was playing for the team and on the pro tour. And I remember when I got my first ranking at number 18, I came onto the tour, and I had an exam 2 hours later, so I couldn't really celebrate too much. But I think there is such importance to going to college and playing collegiate tennis. It's a great path for so many who want to develop their game, take those extra years to have that maturity until they're ready for the pro tour physically and mentally. And she's a smart girl. As Danielle Collins says, the education was important to her as it was to me. And graduating was important to her, as it was to me as well. And so I think that you don't have to have the same path to the pros. Yes, we have lots of teenagers coming up. And excuse me, as you can see, I've been out there courtside, Jeff, every single day from 7:30 a.m. watching the warm-ups and the practice. And I think, along with the sunburn, obviously it's you can hear it in my voice a little bit. But no, I think that Danielle Collins is someone also the USTA can really salute as well as a role model to those who, you say you can have it all. You can go to college. You can graduate. You can have your diploma and also make it on the pro tour. You don't have to worry about losing those years sometimes. So I really salute her. She beat Puig, who had beaten Wozniacki. And again, I think it's a great storyline. She's, again, it goes back to who really wants it. And I think the fact that she's out there to prove that you can go through college and make it on the pro tour, she really wants it. And the most important thing is she's ready for it.
That's good to.
Having
good
said
to
that,
see.
I have to give I definitely would give the nod to Venus in that match. At this stage, I think that, look, you never know. Sometimes Venus's matches can be an adventure. But to me, she is the clear favorite because, as Colin says, that she was her idol, the person she looked up to her entire life. So when you're playing your idol, it's sometimes tough to change modes and want to beat them. But I think it will be a great match, and I think the match is on Venus's racket.
Yeah, and this is their first meeting too. I mean, they haven't had that match yet where, okay, now she's an opponent, she's no longer an idol.
Right. And of course, this is all new to Danielle Collins. She did well in Indian Wells. Of course, Oracle just did a phenomenal job in giving collegiate athletes these opportunities and these wild cards, and so she took advantage of that in Indian Wells. And now she's doing so here in Miami. So now I also want the clothing endorsement companies to help her out a little bit, because it's so. I remember when I first turned pro, and you're waiting for that first big deal to come, and you have that in between stage of being able to still kind of put your own outfit together. But I will be happy to see, I'm sure, in the next month or two that they will have gotten her an endorsement deal, because I've been asked on Facebook many times, why isn't she having a clothing company? Well, they're doing her deals, so everyone has to be patient. But it's also nice, it's refreshing to see someone, a collegiate player out there, making her way for the very first time.
Yeah. Who do we see facing each other in the final on Saturday? Is the women's final, right?
Well, we do have to mention Svitolina, because as usual, she's the highest ranking player left in the draw. We will see Vika play Pliskova. That will be interesting. I will pick Vika to win that if she is not too run down from having to play so many matches. The funny thing is, they asked Vika, aren't you excited to be in the quarters? And she says, well, you're asking me if I'm happy that I won 4 matches. What's the big deal? And that's because the last time, a couple of years back, it was Vika that had won the Sunshine Double, had beaten Serena in Indian Wells, won Miami, and at that point was being slated to become the next number 1 in the world. And this is before she got pregnant. And, of course, she won Miami, and a month and a half later found out she was pregnant. And, and the rest of the story is known that she obviously had Leo, and then has been in this horrible custody battle for almost a year, and unable to play because she's been unable to leave the state of California. Obviously, they worked it out for Miami. But it's still unclear as to what her schedule will be, and it's still unclear if they've worked out this custody issue. So we hope so. We certainly hope so. But if her body is, responding well to the wear and tear of winning 4 matches, to her this is nothing. And she says until she wins the title, there's really nothing to celebrate. So this is someone whose mentality is focused on the fact of winning titles, of being number 1. There's nothing less for her. And so I think that adrenaline and that desire alone should carry her through Pliskova, because I don't think Pliskova moves well enough, and I think she's plateaued. And apparently the vibe I'm getting from her camp is that she's just not willing to do the off-court work needed to improve the mobility and the stamina. So I would think that this is Vika's match to win. It's on her racket. But we're going to also have to watch for Svitolina. She's always so quiet, runs under the radar, but is very proficient out there and just as intense and just as driven to win the title. She's won 2 already this year, and I think that would be a tough match for Venus if that ends up happening. So to me, I'm going to be looking at Svitolina, Venus, and Vika in this draw.
Okay.
And, of course, Sloane. We're going to put Sloane in there, too. I'm picking Sloane to beat Kerber. And it'll be a phenomenal semi, no matter how you look at it, and final, because you have so many ladies with such different stories. Vika trying to find vengeance in this driven campaign, coming back from all the emotions of this custody battle, which she is channeling so well on court. And then you have Venus, of course, winning her last hurrah, almost 38 years of age. Sloane trying to make it into the top 10 for the first time. And Svitolina trying to prove that, you know what, everyone doesn't talk about me. I run under the radar, but I really deserve to be number 1.
And she's very close.
Very close.
A few more like this, and maybe she'll be the next number 1. Kind of as we wrap it up, we talked at the top a little bit about James Blake coming as the tournament director, and sometimes titles aren't exactly what you think they are, because he's actually working alongside executive director Adam Barrett now. The position was kind of created for him, but is this kind of a trend that we may see in other events? Or is it already
we call it the Tommy Haas job, because Tommy Haas really instituted this when they made Tommy Haas the tournament director of Indian Wells. And they had some issues in staffing. And so they brought Tommy in because he's so well respected and so well known in the tennis world. and in the corporate world, quite frankly. And it was a brilliant move, and Larry Ellison did that. It worked out really well, and so I think IMG took a note from that. IMG, of course, who owns this event, and said, you know what? We have a client, James Blake, who can help us the same way Tommy's helped Indian Wells, and they were so right. And I applaud IMG for making this move, Mark Shapiro, because there's no question that having James there has changed the tone of the event. He changes the face of the event, he changes the tone of the event, and the spirit of it all. And to have his good spirit and his positive outlook and his real congenial way of how he approaches things in such a constructive way has just changed everyone else's attitude. And the response has been immediate. He was there for the groundbreaking ceremony. He's just someone who's revered. And so I think that I really salute him because he's put in the work. You know, a lot of times you bring in these top names and it's just in name only and they really don't want to do the work. But that's not been the case with James, Jeff. He's been there every day. He has been there day and night, and he has been addressing everything. He's had to take some tough positions sometimes, but because it's James, everyone's happy to swallow that because they know that he's a good guy, he's a reasonable guy, and you know, as long as James says it's okay, it's usually okay. So I do give him a salute, and I'm glad that they have put him in this role.
James Blake, our person of the week, as we wrap up another edition of Prime Sports Tennis. Andrea, we always appreciate all of the insights and enjoy the rest of your week down at Miami Open. And I guess you come back up the coast with a stop in Charleston before you get home. So safe travels there.
And Nashville. Yeah, we'll go to Davis Cup too. And so, yeah, it's been incredible. It's been an absolutely incredible Miami Open and just a phenomenal salute to their last year on Key Biscayne.
Sounds great. So please check out all of our on-demand shows following each live broadcast. You'll find them at primesportsnetwork.com or on our iTunes and YouTube pages under Prime Sports Network. You can also follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN and receive all of our up-to-date news, opinions, and promotional announcements. And catch us next time as we look back at the conclusion of the Miami Open and look ahead to April's Davis Cup quarterfinals, including the U.S. match, right here on Prime Sports Tennis with Andrea Leand. For Andrea Leand, I'm Jeff Shane. This is Prime Sports Network.